بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا بفضلك علما. Welcome everyone to the Ask Tarek session that we have every month. I received your questions. There are actually not that many this week. So what I decided to do is I don't think we need to belabor these sessions. So I'm going to go through the questions. I think maybe one or two of them I would like to expand on a little bit more, because sometimes when I receive a question, like the paradigm or the philosophy that the question comes from, I think it's important to highlight. Other than that, the questions are pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to go until we're done. The chat is on. I have it on my iPad. If people have questions that are, please type them, but I'll get to that after I finish the question. So I'll begin in the order that I received them. For those not performing Hajj, what is the significance of fasting on the day of Arafat? How best should we observe the day? What is the practice in other countries? So the day of Arafat is a day of great benefit. It's a day of tawbah. It's a day of forgiveness. The fast, it's a sunnah fast for those that are not participating. And by fasting and not being at Hajj, it's our way of participating in the Hajj, as it were. It's a day in which Allah Ta'ala glances upon those who are fasting and says, you are forgiven. Many hadith talk about the meritorious acts of fasting. It's one of those days of the year that you should definitely fast. There are many sunnah fasts throughout the year, but there are a few of them that are days that you don't want to miss. The day of Arafah is one of them. The day of Ashura is one of them. The day of the 15th of Sha'ban is another one. So if fasting is difficult for you other than Ramadan, I would say at least try to do those three. And this is a great opportunity. It's tremendous reward, tremendous forgiveness. And it's very festive because when you fast the day of Arafah and everyone in your house is fasting in community, usually you break fast together. And not only that, but the next day is Eid. So you kind of remember what it was like during Ramadan to fast, and then the next day is Eid. Why is the next day Eid? Is because we are celebrating our forgiveness for our fast on the day of Arafah. So I encourage everyone, the day of Arafah, of course, is the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. It's the day before Eid. Please explain the method of distribution of Qurbani. The sunnah is in thirds, that after one slaughters an animal, a third for your family, a third for your family, meaning your household, sorry, a third for your household, a third for your family and close associates, and then a third that is donated. Again, this is a sunnah for the Shafi'is. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu, he said that you can divide it any way you want. If you want to give all of it to charity, if you want to give half of it to charity, if you want to sacrifice more than one animal, all of one for charity and one for you and your family, all of that is good. It's all khair and it's a sunnah. We should participate in it because there are many poor people that only eat meat during the Eid. This is really an Eid for them because it's the only time that they experience that. So this is one of the impacts of it. If a person performs Hajj or Umrah on behalf of another, should that person have performed Hajj before? Can I pay someone to perform Hajj on behalf of my late parent? Yes, so you are allowed to perform Hajj and Umrah for people that have passed, as long as you have done that for yourself first. So you do your Hajj first, the Hajj that you owe. And Imam Shafi'i also said that we also owe one Umrah. So as long as you take care of that, then you can go multiple times for your parents or for the deceased, etc. And it is also permissible to pay somebody to do that. That person also, the same conditions is that they have already performed their Fard Hajj. Rather than sacrifice, can I have the intention that rather than do Qurbani, I will donate the cost of that to a refugee? We recently had a request from an aid agency to consider this. So this is the Western mind. It's either or, it's black or white. So there's nothing wrong with donating money to the aid agency, of course, but that doesn't take place of the sunnah. The sunnah is the udhiyah, is the Qurbani, for obvious reasons, because this is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is the Eid of sacrifice, Eid al-Adha. So don't we don't want to get into the habit of thinking of things of black and white, either or. This is a very Western thing. I'm guilty of the same thing. As a matter of fact, whenever I'd ask my teachers to criticize me, they said, your only problem is that you're Western. I said, what's that mean? That everything is binary for you. It's either left or right. It's either up or down. It's either black or white. He says, in the East, it's black and it's brown and it's white and it's right up and down, all of that together. So when you learn to do like that, then you will understand. And I struggled personally for many, many, many years with this because it's so against my nature because I grew up here. So I don't criticize the person questioning, but we don't want to get in that habit of thinking either or. Do the Qurbani and donate money, some money to the aid agency. Why? Because the Qurbani in itself is a sunnah. In itself is an act of worship. It's called Qurba, Qurbani. Qurba means you are doing something to establish a close relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the end result of the Qurbani is to feed people that need to be fed. So you also achieve that. So I would say do both, inshallah, and Allah ta'ala will make it easy for you. How old should a child be to qualify to have performed Hajj once in their lifetime? My child was 10 years old, accompanied me for Hajj, performed Hajj. Can this be considered as obligation to perform Hajj accomplished? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a man brought a child to the Prophet ﷺ, and the word that the man used in the hadith is jahil. Jahil, as we know in Arabic, means ignorant. But after a child is born and after they are breastfed, and they start sort of walking and running around, in the Arabic language they call that age al-jahil, because not as a derogatory term, but to indicate that this child still doesn't know anything. Yeah, they might say mama, baba, things like that, but they don't really understand, social etiquette. They don't understand necessarily right from wrong. So the reason I mention this is that in the hadith, the man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and put up his child, and he says, does this jahil have Hajj? That word then therefore indicates that the child is very young, before they have reached the age of puberty. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, and you also get the reward. So you can go to Hajj and take your children with you, and they are rewarded for it, and you are rewarded for that as well, but it does not fulfill the Hajj obligation because the child is not of mature age. So yes, this child has like an extra Hajj, extra bonus points. They are rewarded for that. And you as the parent are rewarded for that. But still, that child, when the child reaches the age of puberty, they cannot say, oh, I went to Hajj when I was a child, I don't have to do Hajj anymore. No, they still have to do the Faridah Hajj as long as they are financially able to, and they are able to physically, man istata'a ilayhi sabila, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated. When I performed the throwing of the stones of the Jamarat, the pebbles did not go far. In fact, I think it fell on the head of another person in front of me. Can this qualify? Yes, inshallah, because again, this is the Western mind. We're very literal. You're not hitting Iblis, right? We're not doing, Iblis is not that stone wall. I know some people, they go crazy and they take off their flip-flops and they go and they beat the stone wall. And it's not Iblis, it's symbolic. We do this because Rasulullah ﷺ did that. He said, "Khudhu anni manasikakum." Take from me the Hajj rites. Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray the way you have seen me pray. So the way we pray and the way we make wudu and the way we do the Hajj and the way we do the Umrah, this is the way Rasulullah ﷺ did it. Remember the famous story of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu when he was doing tawaf and he came to the black stone. He said, Wallahi, he's talking to the stone. He said, Wallahi, I swear that you are only a stone, and were it not that I saw Rasulullah ﷺ kiss you, I would not kiss you. So why did Umar bend and kiss the black stone? Because he saw Rasulullah ﷺ do it, so he did it. So the obligation is you have the pebbles and then you throw it. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah, Allah's not gonna, if you're not like a first-rate pitcher, Allah's not gonna penalize you. If you hit somebody, hopefully the person is not injured. Inshallah qualifies. Sometimes it's very crowded, you're really far away, so you gotta like chuck it. Okay, I think the next question is in relation to Hajj. Is there any other religion in the world where there is a similar event where people gather? How does loads, I don't know how to pronounce that word, in the Catholic faith compare? Or bathing in the Ganges compare? Is there anything closer to this in the Jewish faith? Well, of course, the bathing in the Ganges is huge. I mean, it's a massive event for the Hindus. And the Catholics do have their, places of pilgrimage in Europe, the Shroud of Turin, for example, Lourdes, etc. When they will go up on their knees on the steps, etc. There are other places throughout the Christian world in which Catholics gather. Of course, the visit to the Vatican, again, not at any specific time, but that's a point of pilgrimage. Many of the Orthodox Christians will gather in Easter time in Bethlehem or in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, etc. All of these are gathering places, but there is no institute quite like the Hajj, and that's one of the unique features of Islam. And this is one of the miracles of Islam, because the Hajj is a logistical impossibility. And the fact that we still do it and are still able to do it, it's really a miracle in and of itself. All of these people in this very small area and very barren area, once a year, etc. It really truly is a miracle. And this is, remember, the Hajj is the Hajj of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam. It is to reenact and to relive that. So it has a universal meaning. It's not just Islamic, it's Abrahamic as well. And when we say the word Abrahamic, we mean, the father of all religions and the father of the Abrahamic faith, etc. As far as the Jewish faith is concerned, I am not aware of a massive gathering other than Yom Kippur, of course, is their major holiday in which they go to temple, they fast for 25 hours and they go to temple, etc., ask for forgiveness. So this is their high holiday, one of their high holidays. But as far as a physical geographic place of pilgrimage, I'm not aware of something that is at the magnitude of the Hajj. Is the Wailing Wall in the Jewish faith similar to the Kaaba? First of all, we call it Ha'at al-Buraq. We call it the Wall of Buraq. And this has been its name for over 1,000 years. And the Wailing Wall is something new, is a new name, which is, of course, it's Jewish in origin, but it also has a political meaning. So when we write these questions, this is something I want to point out, that we should use our nomenclature without any derogatory meaning to anybody else. But we call this wall, has a name in Islam, it's called Ha'at al-Buraq, the Wall of Buraq. Why? Because this is the wall and the hinge in which Rasulullah tied the Buraq to, and that is still there in the wall, on his night of the Isra and the Ma'raj. In addition, that wall, the Ha'at of Buraq, and the pavement outside the wall where people congregate, all of that is part of the Aqsa complex, which is still under the Muslim waqf for the entire Aqsa complex. Now, of course, this is what I'm saying, people will, is contentious, but according to international standards, that the waqf has been, and I mentioned this when we talked in the khutbah about Jerusalem and the war and the bombing of Gaza, etc. We talked about that when Jordan entered into peace with Israel in the 90s, the waqf, the Jordanians, the Hashemites, because the king and the royal family of Jordan are descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the Hashemite waqf and claim of the Aqsa complex, of which the Ha'at al-Buraq and the pavement has been acknowledged by the Israeli side. So we just mentioned this as far as we want to revive these terms because this is important. Anyway, is it similar to the Kaaba? No, it's not similar. Jerusalem is the Qibla of the Jews. So if you're a Jew, you pray towards the east. Facing Jerusalem. And the Qibla of all of the Anbiya was Jerusalem, including Rasulullah sallallahu until it was changed for Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu to Mecca from Jerusalem. So Jews faced east when they pray, i.e. facing Jerusalem as a holy city. That part of the wall is held by the Jews to be the last remnant of the second temple of Sulaiman alayhi salam. There's a question later that asks about David and Sulaiman, so we'll get to that. But that is what they believe is the last remnant of the wall of their holy temple. And of course, there are different opinions within Judaism about Can they rebuild the temple? Are they not allowed to rebuild the temple? Does the Messiah have to come back for them to rebuild the temple, etc.? It's a long story, but it's not a focal point of prayer as much as Jerusalem itself as a city is the Qibla. What is the significance of Adam's footprint? Where is it found? There's Adam's Peak in Sri Lanka. Is this real? There is no certainty of any relic that belongs to any prophet except the relics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is one of the miracles of Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi wasallam. No one disputes where the Prophet ﷺ is buried. No historian, no non-Muslim, nobody. There's been everyone understands historically that this place in Medina, in the mosque under the green dome is where Rasulullah ﷺ is buried. All of the other Anbiya, we don't know with certainty. There are graves for Moses and Aaron and Dawood and Sulaiman and Noah and Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhim salam, all of them. Even in Jeddah, there's a grave for Hawa, for Eve, in the old city, in the old graveyard, so on and so forth. But we don't know with certainty. So that's number one. Number two, what is this? What is it real? Inshallah, why not? I mean, there has to be Adam was a real person. There has to be some place where he came and he stepped and this and that. So if I went to Sri Lanka, I would go and pay homage to the footprint attributed to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And there's nothing wrong with that. But do we know with certainty? We don't know. What is its significance? Is these are from Allah's signs. These relics are from Allah's signs. Allah Ta'ala told the Fir'aun, we will keep you or part of you as an ayah, as a sign. And the Mufassirun, they have different opinions about whether it's really Fir'aun, his body, like mummified, or whether it's like a shield. That's not the issue. But even Allah Ta'ala uses the example of the disbeliever. We will preserve your body as a sign of what? Of all of this stuff that happened with Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. So Fir'aun himself, the physical body or the mummified body of Fir'aun is a sign. Why not the foot of Sayyidina Adam or the grave attributed to Hawa, etc.? There's nothing wrong with that, and it's for us to reflect and to remember that these stories in the Quran, these are not myth, these are real stories, and these are real people that lived. One of the sect of Islam uses a clay piece on the place of sajda while praying. What is the logistics behind this? So this is the practice of the Shia, of the Ithna Ashara Shia, the 12 Shia. And the Shia, one of the conditions of their prayer in the Ja'fari madhab is that you can only make sujood on something that is made from the earth, not something that is fabricated. That's a condition. For us, it's a sunnah. So we also have this opinion in the Sunni schools, but it's a sunnah. So if a Shia, one of our brothers or sisters came to this masjid, for example, they would pray on the carpet, but they would make sure that there was something that little clay, because it's clay, it's made of earth, they put it in front of them for them to make sujood on. Or if they have like a janamaz or a prayer mat, sometimes on the prayer mat, even though the prayer mat is made of carpet, in the place of sajda, they have little rows of like clay made from earth. Or you could easily use like a straw mat or something like that. So this is because of their fiqh, their understanding that this is a condition for them, whereas for us, it's a sunnah. Women usually don't trim their nails to increase beauty of the hands. Is it permissible? Usually henna is applied to a bride on the eve of their marriage, but we apply it also on the eve of Eid. Question mark. Henna is fine. There's nothing wrong with henna. It's from the signs of happiness and joy. That's permissible. As far as the nails are increased, the elongating of the nails, there's a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said that the elongated nail is that shaitan takes shade under the elongated nail. So it's not an issue of haram and halal. It's an issue of do we follow the guidance of Rasulullah ﷺ or not. If you hear this hadith and you laugh, you're left to yourself. But don't come in complaining when you have difficulty in your life and your nails are 6 inches long and stuff like that. So it's not from the sunnah of Islam. It's not from the sunnah. And see the way the question is phrased, women usually don't trim the nails to increase the beauty. That's one opinion, because we've been domesticated to think that. What do we say in English if somebody doesn't have a beard? We say clean shaven, which assumes what? If you have a beard, you're not clean, you're dirty. It's an expression. As a matter of fact, it used to be the opposite. When Salah ad-Din, I remember reading this when I was in college, when Salah ad-Din conquered Jerusalem and he went inside the mosque and he prayed his rak'ahs of conquest, etc. It's a sunnah. He sat down and he started receiving the different delegations. His children were frightened by the Europeans because the European men didn't have beards. They thought something was wrong with them. They were scared. It was like the opposite meaning because everybody had a beard. It was normal, even in the West, but for some reason those crusaders, they didn't. So what my point is that when you structure the question this way, then you're thinking automatically long nails means beautiful. So when somebody like me says, but there's this hadith and this is not from the Sunnah, so, oh, he's strict or he's mean. Or, this is not me. This is the guidance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So clip the nails would be my advice. Once you told that music is permissible, not once, I always say this, but when we sing, we dance too. And we dance among women. Women amongst women, it's fine, men amongst men, but I don't think we dance when we get together, but you know what I mean. That's okay, inshallah. And movement, you know, for example, the Sufis, they take the movement of the body to the qasaid, and they make this a spiritual practice. The most obvious, of course, is the whirling dervishes of Rumi, but there are other forms of motion in dhikr. And this has evidence because the Sahaba, they used to move like this. They used to move their heads after the prayer when they would make dhikr, they would recite Quran. So all of these things, there's evidence. There's something about movement. One time, I was living in, this is a personal story. I was living in Bahrain, and Hakim Archuleta, who many people know is a very prominent Muslim American homeopath. For whatever reason, I don't know how, but he was coming to Bahrain for like a week-long seminar or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to go pay my respects. And I was working on this project, and you know, Bahrain's very hot, and I guess I was depressed, but I didn't realize it. So I went to visit him. And when he saw me, he's like, oh man, you look really bad. You look really awful. I was like, oh really? I'm so happy to see you. He's like, yeah, but what's wrong, man? He's like, you know, hippie. He's like, what's wrong with your mood, man? And he's like, let's do dhikr together. And he just started moving up and down, you know, Allah, Allah. And he's just, come on. And I didn't want to do it. I was like, come on, man. I just wanted to say salam and have tea. He's like, no, you got to do it. You got to do it. And I started moving and I really loosened up. And after I left him and I went back home and I walked in, my wife's like, whoa, what happened to you? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you're like so like light and energetic. And so that stuff is real. This is not a joke. It's not like it's not like hocus pocus. This is real. Movement is real. Exercise is real. It gets your blood flowing physiologically. The change in the body changes you. It makes you happy. And in our faith, we have a series of tradition of dhikr and movement and stuff like that. I'm not trying to equate that with dancing to music, but what I'm trying to say is it's natural. You know, you hear something, you get excited, you start moving. Sheikh Hassan al-Attar, radiallahu anhu, who was one of the shuyukh of al-Azhar in the 1800s. He said, I can't remember the quote exactly because it's like rhyming in Arabic, but he said something along the lines, if you listen to a beautiful melody, or if you see a beautiful tree or a beautiful scene, and that does not move you, then you're a donkey, a humar. That means something's wrong with you. If you see beauty or listen to beauty and it doesn't move you to excitement, then something is wrong with you as a human being, because those sights and those smells and that sound are meant to move you, to excite you. Just like when you listen to the Quran or you listen to a beautiful poem, it's natural that you're going to want to move. This is nothing haram. It's not halal or haram. Allah made us this way. Why does Allah Ta'ala say in the Quran that the recitation of the Quran is a shifa, is healing? Because it's Allah's words. And Allah, the Prophet ﷺ told us, Allah Ta'ala says, وَرَتِّلُ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, recite the Quran with tartil, with beauty and a beautiful voice. And the Prophet ﷺ would want certain Sahabas to lead the prayer, or Bilal to give the adhan, because he had a beautiful voice, because it would move the people. The worst thing you can have is a man whose voice sucks gives the adhan. It's like you scare people away, right? You want somebody who has a good voice. So all of this is natural. So as far as the question, can women dance with men? Of course, you know, we're happy people. Can women take part in a beauty contest? I think that's where we would draw the line. Right? I would say absolutely not. Do not participate in a beauty contest. Beauty contest. You know, again, beauty is of many kinds, and and whatnot. But no, we are a people of satr, we are a people of veiling, not of exposure. So we veil our beauty, not necessarily expose it. When I get my monthly cycle, should I wait until I'm 100% clear before I start fasting and praying? Because I keep seeing brownish and yellowish spots for days, and sometimes it completely stops for a whole day. I do ghusl and start praying, and the next day I see brownish spots again. What should I do in this case? So you do have to wait 100%, but remember that the longest period of a monthly cycle for a woman is 15 days. So let's say you have your cycle, and on day 7 or day 8, you think you're done. And you do ghusl and you pray in the morning, and then by the evening, you have spotting again. As long as you're within 15 days, then the Sharia says that spotting is part of the menses. Have you done something wrong? No, because you thought you were done and you showered and etc. So as long as you're within the 15 days, it's considered al-hayd, it's considered menses. If this happens 1 minute beyond the 15 days, the Sharia says that that blood or that spotting is not the blood of the menses, it's the blood of something else. The fiqh says this is called al-istihada, something else, not al-hayd, al-istihada, and therefore you make your ghusl and you continue your liturgical life. So as far as the question is concerned, yes, the woman should be 100% clear that she's finished. And this is natural. Your body is not like a machine, you know. Sometimes these things happen. You think you're done, you do your ghusl, you pray, a couple of prayers later, you're spotting, that's fine. Stop as long as it's within the 15 days. My relation passed away in England on the 4th of July. I am astonished to learn that he left instructions for his body to be cremated. Is it okay for a Muslim to be cremated? No, it's haram. And therefore, your obligation as the living relative is to disobey that order. Why? Because our bodies are not our ownership. As Muslims, we believe that these bodies belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we will be asked about it Yawm al-Qiyamah. And our body will testify against us or for us Yawm al-Qiyamah. We do not own our bodies. The idea of this cremation, whether it's influenced by the Dharmic religions or whether it's influenced by whatever, it's like cool or it's a fad, it doesn't matter. This is a request that we as Muslims living have no obligation to act upon because it's haram. We don't have the right to do that. So therefore, we would, if the person is Muslim, he needs to be washed, shrouded, prayed upon, and buried in a Muslim cemetery. In addition, because I received this question privately before, but for the sake of the community. In addition, this person that left these instructions didn't leave these instructions written or like notarized or documented, just something that he went around saying. When it comes to now in the realm of fatwa, this is now more specific an application. When it comes to these like end of life proclamations, the fatwa process tends not to take the oral statements of people because we have found that this creates problems. In the age that we live in, there's nothing stopping us from documenting something, from having it notarized, from having it drafted by a lawyer. I mean, many of these things can be done online. So if somebody comes to me, this is separate from this issue, somebody comes to me and say, oh, my father died, and before he died, he said to me, I want to leave everything to the cat. I say, you have no obligation to listen to that because I said, is it documented? Is it notarized? Is there a codicil to the will? No. This is something he went around saying. We say we don't pay attention to that. It has to be documented because now we are in the age of paper and digital things and we can confirm that. Let's say that this man did that this man stipulated in a written, stamped and sealed document that I'm going to be cremated. That's his business. That someone else would have to do that. We would not be able to do that. That would be haram for us. You want to ask something?
Yeah. In that case, can you give your organs? The body doesn't belong to you.
The donation of organs is mukhtalaf fihi. It's a difference of opinion. Most of the modern fatwa bodies allow the giving of organs. The more conservative opinion, which is the opinion I follow, is that it's haram. But it's a difference of opinion. من ابتلي بشيء من المختلف فيه فيقلد من أجاز. If you ever find yourself in an issue in which there's a difference of opinion, you are allowed to follow the opinion that is easy, because our deen is rahmah. The only thing that we can criticize if something is absolutely haram. It's absolutely haram to cremate a body. It's complete. There's no. It's haram. So that's not a difference of opinion. The sisters need to cover their heads when reading or listening to the Quran. Why? Is it because angels are present? It's just a habit of respect. It's not obligatory. Sometimes we read in our classical books things and they get mixed into the modern world as if it's like halal and haram. Like Imam al-Ghazali and the likes of Imam al-Ghazali will say, you know, from the custom of going into the bathroom is that you cover your head. And I've had teachers that were like that. You know, they have like big turbans, but when they would go to the bathroom, they would take their turban off and they would have like a little topi, a little kufi in their pocket. And they would put it on their head and they'd go into the bathroom. This is not halal and haram. This is custom. Why? Because when Imam al-Ghazali was writing, the bathroom was probably nasty. So you needed to cover your head because it's extra protection from filth or something like that. But our bathrooms now, even the bathroom in the masjid, is more fancy and more luxurious than even the bathroom of like Caesar. You have to understand that. So things change, things evolve. This is one of those things. So no, when the woman does not have to wear hijab at home and does not have to wear the cover, it's just women do it out of respect for the Quran. As a rule, other than when you are in a state of janaba for men and for women, in which we know that we're not allowed to recite the Quran in most circumstances, we should never find ourselves in a situation that something has prevented us from reading the Quran or something has prevented us from remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is how shaitan plays with you sometimes. The sisters, the photographs discourage angels' presence. Some persons follow a Sufi tradition, have a picture of the sheikh and look at it before they leave home daily. Is this okay? Also, they go to a ziyarah of a Sufi and hug the cement structure covering it. Is this permissible? Photographs are not haram. What the Prophet ﷺ said was the surah. Surah in the Arabic language means a three-dimensional image. In modern Arabic, when photography came, the modern photograph was mistranslated into modern Arabic as surah. If you ask any Arab in our mosque, like, what do you call the photos on the app on your phone? You say surah, photos. But that's not what the word surah means in Arabic. And that's the problem why many people think the surah, the photographs, is haram. I don't know, I mean, I'm not a linguist. I don't know what the right word should have been. But the surah of Rasulullah is obviously not the iPhone photo, because that didn't exist at his time. So what did the surah of Rasulullah mean? A three-dimensional statue that was made for the purpose of worship or exalted status. Why did I say that? Because there's a hadith in which the Prophet walked into the room and Sayyidah Aisha was playing with something and then she hid it behind like a curtain. He said, "What's that?" And she pulled out a horse with wings. He said, "What's this?" She's like, "Oh, these are like the horses and the wings of Sayyidina Sulaiman, alayhi salam." And the Prophet ﷺ laughed so hard that you could see his wisdom teeth. It's one of the few hadith in which the Rasulullah ﷺ laughed very loudly. Now, obviously, that's a sign of approval, not a sign of this is haram. Wasn't the winged horse that she was playing with, wasn't it a three-dimensional image or structure? Yes, but it was not done with the purpose of exalting, or it was not like a Lat and al-Uzza and she's making sujood to it. She's playing with it. So the surah that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about is, for example, we want to honor one of our trustees. So we decide we're going to make a bust of our trustee and we're going to put it here. We can't do that. It's not the place for that. That's the surah. That will allow the angels or prevent the angels from coming. Which is why when you go to any mosque or any Muslim home, you find the ayat of the Quran or the description of Rasulullah or the picture of the Kaaba, something like that. Sheikh Muhammad Bakhit al-Muti'i, who was the Grand Mufti of Egypt in the 1920s, he actually wrote a book, specific, Al-Jawab al-Shafi fi Ibahat al-Surat al-Photography, the complete answer into the permissibility of photographic images, to explain that photography, I mean, at his time in the 1920s, was simply the shutter opening and capturing light, the light being captured and making a likeness of this image. That's not haram. Okay, so the notion that photographs are haram demonstrates that the person saying that does not understand the hadith in the context of Rasulullah. And there are many people that are very respectable, that are great ulama, bigger than I will ever be, that actually say that pictures are haram. But unfortunately on this, they are completely wrong for the reasons that I've mentioned. Okay, so that's one part of the question. The other part of the question, Sufi people have a picture of the sheikh and they look at it before they leave the home. Again, it's like you have a picture of your parents or a picture of your children or a picture of your spouse or a picture of your car, whatever motivates you. You know, for people, it's their sheikh. So obviously it's all permissible because they're all photographs. Why do they do this? Because it reminds them, you know, it reminds them of what's true. It reminds them of what's honest. It reminds them of their obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. Then they hug the cement structure. This is not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So when we go to visit the graves, the sunnah is not to go crazy and jump on the grave and hug it. That's not what we do. We stand there with respect as if this person is in front of you, because this person is in front of you, because Allah Ta'ala reminded us that the people are alive in their graves. They hear us. They just can't respond to us. So if you go to visit Rasulullah Sallallahu, he's there. So if Rasulullah Sallallahu was in front of you, would you jump on top of him and go crazy? You would be so overcome with awe, you would stand there with respect. So the sunnah is that when you go to these places, you stand with respect. Now, there are some people who get carried away and because of the love and the emotion, and that's fine if it comes from an honest place, but it's not optimal. That's not the way of the Salaf. And I've never seen any of my teachers ever do that. They always are composed. I have seen people go crazy. But every time I go to the ziyarah of some, like Sayyidina al-Hussein in Egypt, like a common one, it tends to be the same people that go crazy. So that also makes me question whether it's, Allah knows best. But that's not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ or the Salaf. What exactly does salawat ala nabi mean? Prayers on the Prophet ﷺ from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's Allah's rahmah on Rasulullah. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allah Ta'ala and his angels send salawat on the Prophet. The salawat from Allah Ta'ala is his rahmah on Rasulullah. The salawat from us is a dua that Allah Ta'ala sends his rahmah and prayer on the Prophet alayhi sallam. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. O you who believe, send prayers to Allah on the Prophet alayhi sallam. Allah Ta'ala commands us to do this. Why? Because there is no created person or created entity or anything in the created universe that is greater than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to understand this is a cardinal. This is what La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah means. We call Rasulullah Sakhratul Kawnain. Sakhra, the big pillar or rock upon which is leaning the whole world. That's how he is referred. Sakhratul Kawnain. Rasulullah, you can sit and praise and contemplate how amazing Rasulullah is. It won't do him justice. So because of this immenseness and this awesomeness and his mercy and all of the things that we've been talking about in all of our classes dedicated to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah Ta'ala has elevated him to the status that his name is recited with each adhan. His name is recited in each prayer. Think about the time zones. Every time zone there is an adhan. There's a mosque somewhere in the world that's saying, "Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." And Allah Ta'ala says, "Alam nashrah laka sadrak." Allah Ta'ala says, "Wa-rafa'na laka dhikrak." And we have caused your remembrance to be known. So this is a miracle of the Quran. The Muslims, like other faith traditions, could have forgotten about their Prophet and not mentioned him often. But look how often we mention Rasulullah's name, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is a miracle, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam solves all your problems. تُقْضِي بِهَا الْحَاجَات. That's the key. A man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mentioned this to you before, and he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I'm gonna 1/3 of my free time I'm gonna spend doing salawat on you. Is this good?" The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Good, and if you do more, it would be better." He said, "Okay, half. I'll give you half of all of my extra time, and I'll do salawat on you. Is this good?" The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "This is good, and if you do more, it will be better." And he kept going. So he said, "All of my extra time, Ya Rasulullah, every moment spare I have, I will do salawat on you. Is this good?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "This is good, وَيَكْفِيك," and it's enough for you. So because of this hadith and many others, the saying salawat on the Prophet ﷺ solves your needs, which is why it's very common when you lose something, what do you say? Or you forget something, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. What was I? What does salat on the Nabi have to do with I forgot? Because it's like an instinct. And then you do it and then you remember. Because your needs are solved by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So those are like the mundane things. I can't find my keys or I can't find my phone. Imagine Yawm al-Qiyamah, you know what that will do for you. That will come and it will liberate you from all of that stuff that we hear about in the Quran and the Sunnah about the hashr and the nashr and the su'al and all of it. Sure, you got a fast straight ticket. You'll find yourself in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam drinking from his hands. Khalas, it's over. All of this because you did salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever the closest to you, to me, Yawm al-Qiyamah, are those of you that make salawat on me frequently. Al-mar'i ma man ahab, you are with the one whom you love. Even just love of the Prophet ﷺ solves that problem." So yeah, we can go on and on. Suggestions on a subject matter, halaqa, angels in Islam. Well, I selected the Ghazali book. Inshallah, we'll be reading Al-Arba'in for Usul al-Din, which is Imam al-Ghazali's summary of his own Ahya al-Ulum. It's one of the last books that he wrote in his life. It will occupy us for at least 2 years. It's a great book. It's a book. It's not like bullet points. It's like a book. So it will take us, that's Islam A to Z. We'll talk about angels along the way. What is Islam's position on abortion? Is it permissible at any point? If so, at what point is it permissible? For the Ahnaf, they say that the first 120 days, the first 4 months, because of the hadith that the ruh has not been placed into the body, abortion is possible without preconditions. Of course, I say that, it's permissible, but it's also a big choice. I'm not advocating for that, but it's permissible. After that point, it would require a fatwa from a mufti, depending on the mother had harmed, or what does the doctor say? It's case by case. But the Sharia is very liberal when it comes to these. We don't have this evangelical Christian problem at all. It's such not a problem that Muslims, I don't know, I'm surprised that they keep asking about it. Of course, if the mother's in harm's way, or if the doctor says the baby is severely underdeveloped, whatever the case may be, the Sharia is very liberal when it comes to these cases, but it's beyond the 120 days, it would require an actual case-by-case basis. Can I pray sunnah prayers on behalf of the deceased who have missed prayers? No. This is the one thing that we can't do for the deceased, because Allah Ta'ala says, Inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. That prayer has been given to each one of us as a specific allotted thing. So even though we can do Hajj and Umrah and fast and settle debts and do sadaqah, etc., we can't do the prayer for the deceased. In school, we are asked, what is the difference between Sunni and Shia Ismaili? What is the simplest explanation? It's like asking me, what in one sentence, what's the difference between democracy and Marxism? It's a big thing. The simplest explanation. We have a special mushaf in our family. And we are 3 brothers. One brother is called Sunni, one brother is called Shia, the third brother is called Ismail. And we're arguing, where should we place the mushaf? Should we place it on this table? Should we place it on the bookshelf? Should we place it in the drawer? This is the difference between the Sunni, the Shia, and the Ismail. We're all brothers and sisters of the same family. We all say the Shahada. We all face the Qibla. We all eat halal food. We honor the Quran and the Sunnah. But there are differences that stem from certain issues regarding After that, after those basic agreements, there are certain differences, of course. We say emerge from the political circumstance that happened after the passing of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The Shia will argue that it's not about politics, but it's about the right of the family of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, whom we honor and love, alayhim assalam, to rule politically as well as spiritually. That's really the difference. The result is that the Sunnis are a majority, about maybe 85%, and the Shia of all of the denominations are a minority. But from the Arabian Peninsula east, even though the global numbers are, as I said, sometimes it's 50-50, or sometimes there are places like Iraq or Kuwait or Bahrain, even Afghanistan in the subcontinent, in which the Shia might even be more than the Sunni. So it's important that we understand these things. Now, despite what I say, there will always be political differences. I'm not naive, I understand that. But what we need to raise our children to understand is that we are one family. Because this fitna between the Sunnis and the Shia can be easily exploited by other people who wish us harm and wish us to fight amongst one another rather than to be united. The Shia are considered a madhab of fiqh, a madhab of theology that we acknowledge as Muslim, and they have done the same for Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. This is the reconciliation that has been happening between Sunnis and Shia since the 1950s. This is what we were taught at Al-Azhar. This is how we deal with the Shia when we greet them. You know, they're our brothers and sisters, so on and so forth. The differences go back to the early generation, if we want to know the differences. You know, who will be the Imam or the Khalifa, etc. But remember this example of the three brothers, you know, from the same family, so on and so forth. Okay, somebody sent, well, we are. Okay, there's still 4 more questions. Did Moses pass away before seeing Palestine? Yes. Alayhi salam. And after he was passed away, he was carried. His body was carried across into Palestine, and that's why there's a grave attributed to him there. The Jews lived in that area for some 73 years under David and Solomon. Any more details? Okay, so I wrote down the timeline. So Saul, Talut, who I gave the khutbah about a couple of weeks ago, his son-in-law was Sayyidina Dawood. Dawood was in his army, alayhi salam, and Sayyidina Dawood became the king of the Jews, and then after him, Sulaiman alayhi salam. Sulaiman established the first temple approximately in 957 BC. Now, of course, when you go from BC to 0, you count down. From 957, or from the time of Saul until 722, the Hebrews ruled in the Palestine area until the Assyrians conquered Israel. And then Judea fell in 587 BC to the Babylonians, what the Jews call the Babylonian exile. The temple was destroyed during the first temple was destroyed during the Babylonian occupation of Palestine and Jerusalem in 587. So in that little chunk from Saul to the Babylonian destruction of the temple, that's about 400 years of Hebrew rule in that area. Under the Persians, the Jews were allowed to return, but they were not allowed to rule. The temple was rebuilt a second time, and Allah mentions this in the Quran. And the second temple was finally destroyed in 70 CE by the Roman Emperor Titus. And then the Jews were expelled and remained a minority up until the modern state of Israel. If you take from the time of the original Arabs that inhabited Palestine till today, the Hebrews / the Jews only ruled politically for 10% of the time of the history of that land. So I don't know what the questioner wanted exactly, but I wrote down the timeline. Okay. A child has not seen their parent for 10 years. And this was a personal question that was sent, but the upshot is that there's a child, an adult child that has not seen their parent for 10 years and the parent is elderly. Now, you have to understand that your spiritual livelihood depends on a large part on the way you treat your parents. Now, say my parents are abusive to me. I still have obligations because they're my parents. That's what we have to remember. Just because my parent might be a bad person or even a non-Muslim, or a disbeliever, or someone that hates Islam, for example. Whether there were Sahaba who their family and their parents didn't become Muslim, you still have an obligation towards them. That's why Allah reminds us in the Quran, because if Allah left it to us, we would just sort of, what the hell, I don't care, they're bad. No, we're not allowed to do that. You have to find some way of doing good. In this case, the family is Muslim. Doesn't matter what the parent did. Your father or your mother, they're elderly, they're about to pass. Don't let them pass when they're upset with you. Going to them and making them smile, that smile might enter you into Jannah. Despite what you think they've done to you, or despite what they've actually done to you, or whatever the abuse, just seeing your parent bringing happiness on your parent's face, that act, you have no idea the weight of that act with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can give all you want, you can pray all you want, you can fast all you want, but that act alone, it's so great you will not even comprehend it until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our obedience to our parents is something that is sacred. The Prophet ﷺ said that keeping your family ties, keeping ties with your parents, it elongates your life. It could either elongate your life literally, or it could elongate your life in the sense that you get more rizq, or you have more barakah. Don't forget that, again, we're not two-dimensional people. There's a huge dimension called barakah. Barakah is very important. Don't underestimate the barakah. Don't underestimate. Look, one time there was a man, my sheikh's sheikh, and he walked into the Hussein Mosque. And the Hussein Mosque is very big. And when you walk in the mosque, the Qibla is like our mosque is this way, and the other door is way, it's just like, it feels like it's like an acre away. So he walked into the mosque and he saw this man who looked very, beautiful and saintly. And the sheikh who's narrating the story, he said, I said to myself, I'm going to go kiss this man's hand. Because he sensed that there was something about this man. And that man, because he was actual saint, he felt that this young sheikh was going to come and kiss his hand. So the minute he saw him approaching, he went like this, like that. Because to make him like toward him, there are people like that. I don't want any attention. So the sheikh was narrating the story. He said, even if I'm going to kiss this man's hand. And he kissed this man's hand. And since that day, the sheikh swore, and all of his students, he passed away many years ago, decades ago. He said he never got a cold for the rest of his life. So don't underestimate the barakah and where you find it. Making your parents happy as they get older, as they get lonely. Maybe they have regrets. If you feel you've been abused or wronged, whatever. This is for you. Be selfish. Go for yourself, for the barakah. Don't be so shallow and two-dimensional. Oh, my parents, were bad to me. I don't want anything to do with them. Don't be like that. You have to show rahmah. That act of mercy might save them, might make them turn, might make tawbah, so on and so forth. Do this while you have the chance before your parents pass. Because when your parents pass, of course, you can still show obedience to them, but it's going to be different. Do this while you have the chance. Do not underestimate the power of the dua of your parents. And your parents' dua can make you or break you. In Arabic, in Egypt especially, we have this like theme, maybe it's like an Azhar thing, I don't know, but like when you see somebody who's messed up, you say, who knows, maybe his mom made dua against him. It's like you're so messed up that the only way you can be this dysfunctional is if your mom made dua against you. Where does this expression or this theme come from? Because we know that the parents' dua is accepted. So do you want your mom, especially your mom, to make dua against you? No. So before the exam, what do you do? Mama, please make dua for me. I have an exam at 10:15 a.m. I need you to stop everything you're doing at 10:15 and read Surah Yasin. Why do we do that? Because mama's dua is accepted. Even for your kids, mom, my kid is sick, but please make dua. Why do you ask your mom for dua? Because there's no gap between that and the dua. So this dua that's powerful, for the father as well. Don't underestimate that. So don't cut off your ties. You're hurting yourself, you're harming yourself. Okay. Questions that came in. Oh, the wrong button. I know I lost them. I'm trying to explain this to my kids, but don't know that I really understand why the Qibla is northeast and southeast. I went online. That's the first mistake. Never go online. That's why you have me. Also, they are, and look, I even wear a red hat so you can find me in the crowd. Also, they're saying the world is round. So does it really matter? Does it matter if the world is round? This is a haqiqah. Of course, the world is round. This is the whole issue that the world is round. It does to me, but what is the scholarly theologian view? This is not about scholarship. This is about geography. This is about reality. The world is round. Please, we've dealt with this centuries ago. And then we were taught the world that the world is round. The world is not flat. Newsflash, the world is round. And because the world is round, if you put a string on Washington, D.C., take your shoelace and put the shoelace on Washington, D.C., and then you make it very tight and you stretch it as much as you can, and you put it in Mecca, you will see that the string going out of Washington, D.C. is northeast because it's a circle. And because it's a circle, the shortest, if I'm Washington, D.C. is here, Mecca is here. The shortest distance is this way. Haven't you noticed that when the plane takes off and you go for Africa or even Europe, you're going this way? Now, if you think that the Qibla is southeast, tell the captain on the next flight, I'm going to please go south and see where you will end up. You'll end up in Antarctica or South Africa or something like that. I guarantee you, Allah. Al-Bayruni and all of these people have already established this. Ijma', by consensus, the Qibla in North America is northeast. We have a globe. Next time I'll bring my shoelace or a string and I can show you physically, I can demonstrate. If you don't believe me, and this is, you're like, Tarek is just joking, there is an American sheikh, Sheikh Noah Keller. He wrote an entire book, like 300-400 page book just on this issue, demonstrating it. And he did a demonstration that's even more impressive, which is the fuqaha agree that the space above the Kaaba is also the Kaaba. So for example, if you wanted to extend the Kaaba like 500 feet up, you could, I mean, no one's going to do that, but you could. And there's one time in the year when it's Dhuhr in Mecca, you can see the sunrise in North America. And if you do that, I can't remember what day it is, but if you do that and you had somebody in Mecca and the adhan is happening and they call the person in North America and they say, where do you see the sun? Because the sun is right now above the Kaaba. They will say, we see it in the northeast. So that means you physically are seeing the Kaaba. Physically. This is not like the string, and it's physical. By consensus of the uqala, anyone who thinks, anyone who knows, even the consensus of NASA, we agree with them, it's northeast. Okay. I thought souls travel. So are they at their graves all the time? Most of the time? Did I mishear? Please clarify. Thank you. Yeah, the souls are tethered in a way to the body, so they can travel, but they're tethered. So when you go to the grave of so-and-so, they are there, because that's physically where they were buried. How can we encourage our teens to pray? Teens, I don't think you can encourage them. When they're young, you need to teach them to pray. Prayer comes by observation and by habit. If a child grows up seeing their parents pray, they'll pray, or they won't think it's weird. If a child grows up seeing their parents or father, for example, only prays when they go to the mosque, they'll do the same thing. Or if they see that the parents pray quickly at home but pray slowly at the mosque, so on and so forth. So these things, when I get a question that has teens in it, we need to start when they're younger. As far as teen, make dua. We just talked about the parents' dua for their child, etc. It's accepted. Make dua for your children. Explain to them the importance of this. You can teach them that they can combine Dhuhr and Asr in either time, Maghrib and Isha in either time. That way the prayer will be easier for them. So they only have to pray the 5 prayers in 3 times during the day, for example. You can try to come to the mosque more often, pray as a family at home, pray Maghrib and Isha together at home, so on and so. These are the things that you can do to encourage it, inshallah. But with all things, you need to come with love and mercy, and not with fire and brimstone, because this is the sunnah of the Prophet. But at some point, you do need to explain to them the consequences of not praying, especially if they're older. Those are all the questions. Anything else?
Define the word parasha, I've been thinking.
How do I define what?
It's obviously hypothetical. The word parash, like in Quran, the earth was made a farash for us.
Yani, a place to rest. Firash we also use for bed. A place to rest. Anybody else? When is Maghrib? How much time? I think 3 minutes.
So, necessary, you don't need to take the ablution inside the Quran.
If necessary, you don't have to have wudu to read the Quran. That's what Ibn Hazm says. Ibn Hazm is one of the great jurists, and this is the opinion we give people in order not to prevent people from having a relationship with them. Well, sorry, you don't need wudu to recite Quran from memory. The issue is, do you need to have wudu to touch the mushaf? Ibn Hazm says you don't, and this is the opinion that we go with, because it's what happens is when people say, oh, I can't touch the Quran because I don't have wudu, what ends up happening is they don't make wudu. And then therefore they don't read the Quran, and then they lost that opportunity. So to break that, we say, no, don't follow that opinion freely.
But almost visits our library here, and wants to look at the Quran, it's perfectly okay.
Well, if a non-Muslim wants to touch the Quran, it's a little bit different. What we should do is we should show them the Quran that's translated. Because that's technically not the Quran, because more than 50% of it is not the Quran. If it's a Quran, like Arabic only from Fatiha to Nas, that's a problem, because we know that they're not in a state of ritual purity. So another way around that is you can show them like the juz, the Quran that are like in 30 parts. You can show them a part, because that part is not the Quran either. Or if we had like a special illuminated like poster of one of the nice pages of the Quran, I mean, obviously they can look at that. So there are ways around it. But if it happens by accident,
What about
that's not considered a mushaf. So if the Quran has Arabic and then has tafsir, or Arabic and then the English and then footnotes, as that means that more than 50% of the text is not the Arabic. So therefore, it's no longer considered the Quran. The Quran in Islamic law is specifically defined as one volume from the Fatiha to Nas, written in the Uthmanic script. So if it was written in another script, it wouldn't be considered the mushaf.
it has to be the complete collection, or even one page?
No, if it's one page, it's not the mushaf. So if you had a ring or a necklace that had ayat al-kursi, you wouldn't have to remove that if you went to the bathroom or something, because that's not considered the Quran. I mean, it's part of the Quran, of course, but it's not the mushaf that the hadith talk about, or the Quran that the hadith talk about not touching it if you don't have wudu, so on and so forth.
What happens to iPad version, iPhone version?
iPad, phone, it's not the Quran. Not the Quran from the fiqh definition. Of course, it's the Quran, of course. Like if you had CDs or tapes, that's not the mushaf that's talked about in the text.
Listen to the Quran while you are studying.
You can listen to the Quran even if you're in a state of major ritual impurity. If a woman if you're in a state of janaba, you can listen to the Quran, of course. And there's a difference, of course, if the Quran is playing in the background or if you're actively listening. There's a difference of things. There's nothing wrong with that.
But isn't it disrespect if you don't know what the thing says?
No, don't think of it as disrespect and respect. Think of it as that's how powerful the Quran is, that any aspect of the Quran has benefit. Even looking at the Quran has benefit. And that's why it used to be in Muslim majority places, and it's still like that for many places, is that any shopkeeper, when they start their day, they would play the Quran. Or any cab driver, when they start their day, they would play their Quran for at least the first half an hour. It's just normal, even while they're working. That's how powerful the Quran is. So we wouldn't say, oh, that's disrespectful. We'll say that's like you got 10% of the Quran. And then the young boy that's in the, or young girl in the mosque memorizing the Quran, they're like getting like 60%. And the person who's a hafiz and reciting, he's like 80%. Look at it like that. Again, not black and white. You know, disrespect is if, like, you know, you step on the Quran, stuff, or you chucked it across. That's disrespectful. But I want to listen to the Quran, or I want it in the background. It's all barakah. And there are many people who have memorized the Quran just that way. They just always, they constantly hear it. And you will find, if you listen to the Quran all the time, you will find that there are verses that you have picked up, like when Ramadan comes and then the Imam is leading Taraweeh. Like, oh, I know that verse. Oh, I know that page. Oh, I remember. Where did you learn it? Because you just heard it. So, as a rule, as I said, never find yourself in a situation where you've prevented yourself from a relationship with the Quran. الله تعالى أعلى وأعلم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.